Hi, my name is Dr. Radhika Gosavi, your host for this podcast. In this third episode of Talk Brainy to Me, we are going to discuss social and emotional learning, which is an important part of all of our lives. To get a different perspective about this topic, we have the pleasure of having Mr. Atul Kulkarni, an acclaimed Indian actor and winner of multiple Indian national awards, as our guest today. Over the course of his career, Mr. Kulkarni has tapped into numerous social and emotional perspectives by portraying characters in notable Indian films, theater productions, and original series such as Rang De Basanti, Hey Ram, Natrang, and Bandish Bandits. Based on his technical training at the prestigious National School of Drama and decades of experience, we are excited to get Mr. Kulkarni's perspective about this important topic. First, I would like to welcome Professor Sahana Murthy to share some background information.
Welcome, good afternoon, everyone. This is the third episode of Talk Brainy to Me. And like those of you who've joined us for the past two episodes, you may know that this is a video interview podcast. It's hosted by the Interdisciplinary Program in Educational Technology here at IIT Bombay. What we do in this podcast is that we feature prominent guests who are artists, philanthropists, athletes, entrepreneurs, amongst others, and those who have a passion for science, education, technology, learning, and so on. Our host for this entire series is the fabulously energetic Dr. Radhika Gosavi. She is an educational neuroscientist and a visiting faculty member in our department. So thanks, Radhika, for hosting this entire series. You can watch all the previous episodes on YouTube by searching for the playlist called Talk Brainy to Me. We will put it in the chat as we go along. Or you can look for the IIT Bombay, EdTech IIT Bombay YouTube channel. In today's episode, we are excited to learn and talk about empathy and social emotional learning through an actor's lens. For this, we are really excited to welcome our guest today, Mr. Atul Kulkarni, who many of you would know is an acclaimed Indian thespian. Beyond his expertise in acting, Atul has a deep interest in education and cultivating positive learning experiences for all children. Based on his varied interests and his training at the National School of Drama, we are excited to get his perspective today on various topics related to cultivating empathy and social emotional learning skills, and also discuss how these skills can aid educational experiences, can aid learning and teaching. So I will now hand it over to Dr. Radhika Gosavi, and she will give us a more detailed understanding of background, actually, of what is socio-emotional learning and its really interesting connection to acting, and then begin the interview with Mr. Atul Kulkarni. Let's welcome them both.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Sahana, for the great introduction, and welcome again, Mr. Atul Kulkarni. Before we get started, as Sahana mentioned, I'll give just a little bit of background about, what this topic is about and why it's important and what the connection to acting is. So social emotional learning is really the process through which we learn a number of really important life skills, including self-awareness, self-control, developing relationships with other individuals, understanding each other's emotions, and so forth. So with this in mind, it's becomes clear why social emotional learning is not only important to understand others, but also important for education and life success generally. In terms of education, a lot of the times lessons surrounding social emotional learning are often tacked on to the end of a curriculum. But it's really important for all of us to keep in mind that learning itself is intensely social and emotional experience. And so this is something that we need to consider all the time. Now, when it comes to acting, and social emotional processing is believed to really be at the core an actor's craft in many ways. And so this really provides a powerful lens for us to understand social emotional processing on a much deeper level. At least as per my understanding, when a character is portrayed it's necessary to understand that character's emotions, that character's mental states, and use your feelings at times to portray that character, some that an actor may not be feeling. So today we're hoping to learn more about these things and much more. And we have the incredible pleasure of being able to talk to Mr. Atul Kulkarni, who I believe is one of the finest actors of today's generations. I could go on about all my favorite films and roles of yours, you know, from Lakshman and Rang De Basanti to Guna Kagalkar Natrang and even Digvijay in Bandish Bandits. But that'll just be an hour itself, so I won't go down that path. So to start with, you know, I have a question that may be a little bit basic, but I think is important for all of us to get on the same page at the beginning. So in terms of the wondering, a lot of the times we say acting or, you know, people are actors. What does this really mean? And what is your definition of acting?
Hello, everyone. It's really a pleasure to talk on this unique subject because I'm used to give interviews about my releases and all that. So this seems quite intense to me after reading Radhika's note. So please bear with me. I don't know what I'm going to talk about, but let's see. So just to answer this first question, what's acting to me? I recall simplest definition of theater, which is said to be theater happens when A pretends to be B and C watches. It is as simple as that. So as far as acting is concerned, I think it is very simple. When A pretends to be B, it's acting. That's all. That's what it is to me.
Great. Well, that definitely simplifies it. And I hope the questions that are to follow, we can kind of dig into all the different things that, you know, go on in terms of A pretending to be B. And so the first kind of question that I have about social emotional processing generally touches on two very important ideas of empathy and theory of mind. So empathy, put broadly, is the ability for us to understand other people's emotions and understand why those other people are feeling those emotions from their own perspective, right? To be able to step into their emotional place or emotional shoes in a way. And kind of hand in hand with that is this idea of theory of mind, which essentially says that it's also important to understand the other person's beliefs in terms of, you know, that person's mental state, what is the knowledge that they have, what are the desires that they have, and so forth. Interestingly, there's all sorts of brain areas involved in both of these processes, from the front of the brain to different areas that are more under the surface, such as the amygdala, which is important for emotional processing, and even various systems, such as the mirror neuron system. And so, as I mentioned before, these skills are very important for social emotional well-being and also academic learning. So keeping all of this information in mind, you know, and given that an actor's job a lot of the time involves these various mechanisms, I'm wondering, how do you start to understand your character's emotions or your character's beliefs in various ways?
Well, for that, my starting point is the script, of course, because more than the actor, the writer, spends a lot of time on all the aspects that you said, on the story, on the character that I'm supposed to play. So that is always my starting point, or any actor's starting point, that the script that you have is the main thing. Then, of course, in cinema, the interpreter of that script is extremely important, which is the director. And this is very important because when I read a script as a person, as an actor, it is my interpretation, it is my understanding about the character, let's say. Let us, if we just keep our focus on the character instead of the whole script and other characters and all that. So it is my interpretation about that character, as to why that character is behaving in a certain way, what could be his history, or things like that, to understand that person that character is. However, when there is, as I said, there is director, and then he comes up with interpretation. It is not necessary that always the two interpretations are completely different from each other and all that. It's not necessary. But there are chances that because naturally two different people are looking at a fictitious character which doesn't exist. So, and we are trying to draw a picture of an entire life of a character through the script, whatever we have in that 2-hour story. So when this is the situation, naturally, there are bound to be places where two people, like the actor and the director, they think differently about that particular person. I think it is extremely important in the topic that you are addressing, because even in our real life, there could be one person, but different points of view of other people who are dealing with that person, with the same person in the same situation probably. So I think the same thing happens here as well. And so with the script and with the director, and of course, when you spend more time with the character, then come the other actors and you discuss with them. So these are the main instruments, let me put it that way, which help me to kind of understand the character that I'm going to portray. So this is where it starts.
Yeah, that's definitely very interesting that, you can start with something written, right? That's so tangible in a way, and put all of these different layers to it that builds upon it. Is there any specific exercise or anything like that that comes to mind that, was kind of the point, helped you into understanding a character for the first time? Like, was there an aha moment of sort, or an exercise or any activity that led you to do it?
So it's different for different scripts, one. Secondly, it varies according to your experience. It varies according to the director, according to the other crew members that you have. So there is no one way or one exercise or one moment per se which you can say is common with all the characters or all the scripts. So the trigger points could be absolutely different. As I said, of course, it is the script, but even when you are reading the script, and suppose you have read the script and you are doing some other film, you are, kind of going to your friend's house, or you're doing your day-to-day activities, and you suddenly see something, you find a person, or if you remember a person, so the trigger can be anything which kind of stimulates and which kind of shows you a path as to, oh, this could be closer to the character that you are trying to. But it is not necessarily true that you always have to find some inspiration from outside. Like I said, from a person. No, absolutely not. You have to depend on more certain things like the script, which is in front of you, like the interpretation that you are making out of it, the director and all. So no, there is no particular exercise as such. I always say that, like we say that you have to give time to your family. They always say that you have to spend time with your family. You have to spend time with your loved ones and all that. I think for an actor, the character is that loved one. He is the family member, and you have to spend time with that character by reading the script again and again, by thinking about the script, by talking about the character or the script if the need is there. But I have a feeling that you have to constantly give a space in your mind to that character in your daily life. Or I may be, shooting for some other character, but that character needs to live in my brain all the time, so that consciously, subconsciously, but I should give that space to that character. And
Right.
then, of course, there are other things which are not necessarily tangible, not necessarily the same. But this, I think, is very important, that you have to give space and time to your character.
Right. Yeah. And, perhaps in this process of giving space and time is kind of this similar to what I was saying in terms of empathizing and understanding things from the character's perspective and trying to understand the beliefs and so forth. So that time and
Absolutely.
space, would you agree, is where all of these things are kind of happening? Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That makes
Absolutely.
that
So,
makes total
yeah,
sense.
you,
Yeah.
you are
And it's
absolutely right. And we always use this word empathy. We are
mhm.
taught to empathize with the character that you are doing. And, that which basically means that you try and understand the situation that that character is in, try and understand why a particular character is behaving in a particular way. So, all this is, I think, roughly should come under empathizing.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And that kind of, leads me to asking you about another very important tenet of social emotional learning, which is adaptive emotion regulation. And an example of this would be if any of us feels a negative emotion. This is the ability that we have to calm down and have the right sort of thinking for us to calm down. Interestingly, the area in our brain that's activated when this happens is called the amygdala, which is under the main cortices. And this change in the functioning of the amygdala actually also triggers changes in the functioning of the frontal cortex in the front of our brain. And so, the broad conclusion is that our behavior of regulating our emotions is causing very tangible changes in our brain. And so, again, this behavior is very, very important, of course, in various ways. And so, as you mentioned earlier, in the process of understanding a character and going through the emotional cycles in various ways, how do you think your training and your experience has helped you regulate your emotions, regulate your character's emotions in various ways? And how do you think this kind of translates between your real life and, your real life?
I think there are as many acting methods as many actors in this world. Uh, we broadly may say method acting and this acting and that acting, but I have a feeling that every individual, every actor has his own or her own method of acting. So when I'm answering this question, you must understand that this is my process, or this is my way of looking at it.
Yes.
This should not be looked at as what happens in acting per se
Okay.
overall, but this is my point of view. So I have always believed that acting is a technique, and especially when you accept acting as your profession and it becomes your work, it becomes your everyday job, then I think it's more so that it's a technique that you have to learn, you have to master. And as I said in the answer of your very first question, this technique is very simple. I need to pretend to be someone else. And why am I doing it? The purpose of it is very clear, that because he is watching me and I need to convince that person, the character that that person is watching is actually there in reality, in that particular reality of screen, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so because the audience knows that this is a particular actor, so suspension of disbelief is understood. It is kind of taken for granted. That the audience knows that he's watching or she's watching a particular actor. So that's fine. But beyond that, I should be able to convince the audience. Uh, so how do you convince? You convince through the reality of
Hmm.
what you are saying, of what you are emoting. All this is in the context of the story, that we must not forget. that is in the restraints of the technicalities of film, the camera, the lights, everything else. So with all this, my job is to convince the audience that this is the story and I'm part of this story, and whatever part that I'm given, I'm trying to tell the story through my character. To do this, and to do this continuously, and to do this considering all these limitations, all the technicalities, according to me, the technique of acting is extremely important. I don't really believe in extemporing or extempore acting, or I just don't think I just go and I just act. I don't believe in that. Because even when you are saying it's extempore, or even if you are saying that instinctive, there is nothing called instinct, according to me. I think that this technique is what I believe in, and this is what, according to me, an actor should master.
Mm-hmm.
All the other things that we have spoken before this, about the script, about the director, and about other instruments that one uses, where you may read material which is relevant to the character. You may listen to certain, say, let us say, songs or speeches or whatever is relevant to get more and more information about that character. And this information is the tool. Information about the character, in whichever way you can get that information to understand that character. And I think that's how I approach my character.
Yeah, that makes sense, to be able to understand, your character as similar to another human, to then be able to kind of put those emotions forward, in the right kind of way, together. One, I think, from my memory, an example of a time where I thought, I really got the emotions you were trying to portray in Rang De Basanti, when your character, I think, says a poem, Sarfado Shikita Manna.
Yeah.
I very clearly remember it giving me goosebumps. It looked like you. Of course, the character looks like you. I obviously didn't know you or anything like that, or know anything about your thoughts, beliefs, etc. But man, you convinced me that you really, believed in that poem and the patriotic kind of emotions that were behind that. So to be able to regulate that is really, really interesting. Now, in your previous couple of responses, I think you've touched upon this theme of individual differences, right? The fact that people can approach things from a different angle, or have different interpretations. That actually hangs well with the fact that all of us actually learn differently, or all of us have a different pattern of activation in our brain for the same stimulus set, or the same items that we're looking at or thinking about in various different ways. So with this in mind, can you give us an example of a character of yours that you think could have been interpreted differently, by you, or by another actor, and how do you think this could have been done, and what is the kind of emotional recipe that would go into that would be different?
So every character, if it is done by any other actor, it can be completely, not completely, but it can be a different character. So it's true for every character that I have done. So we can talk about this particular thing if we take any character that I have done, and even if I read the script and I bend I'm bent upon interpreting it differently, even I can do that. I think it is possible for every character, kind of a very open-ended thing. One example may not be possible for that. Still, one thing is very certain, that when we say empathy, when we say understanding the other person or character or whatever it is, leave aside films. But I think that understanding the person or empathizing with the person is a separate process what is most important is why are you doing it and what are you going to do with that information.
Right.
And it is true even in our regular life, according to me. So to just give a extreme example, if suppose there is a dictator or there is a person apparently which you feel is doing very, a bad thing to another person. Let us put it that way. So I don't think that that person doesn't have empathy.
Yeah.
That person absolutely understands what that other person that he's torturing or she's torturing or, doing bad things to. I absolutely understand what my actions are doing to that person. So there is no lack of empathy there in that sense. In fact, if I want to rule someone, if I want to dictate a certain group or a person, in fact, understanding that person's psychology is much more important than if I want to do anything good to that person. My point is that all these instruments that we use to understand the other person, they are on one side, but what I do with it and what is my purpose is completely another thing. And as social animals, I think that it is our basic instinct, survival instinct, to understand the person. We can't survive otherwise. We need to
Yeah.
understand the person that we are dealing with. A group or an individual, maybe a relative, maybe a close one, or a foe, a friend, whoever, whatever it is. But our survival depends on understanding the other person. So that's something given. So according to me, that's true even when me as an actor, I'm trying to understand the character. So what am I going to do with that information differs
Yeah.
from person to person. And that's, you may roughly call it interpretation, you may roughly call it the use of the information or whatever it is. So yes, there can be umpteen number of interpretations of that character, and that's why we see actors doing, say, Hamlet, for example, for hundreds of years, and there is an audience watching Hamlet for generations,
Yeah.
and trying to understand the character in completely different ways. So I think there are immense possibilities, and like we said right in the beginning, that even in our life, there are very close person could be understood completely differently by different people, and even by one individual differently at different times.
Yes,
I
absolutely. I
think it's
mean,
very dynamic.
things are constantly changing, right? We're
Yeah,
evolving in our life. Our interpretations of everything are changing, from
yeah,
the
yeah,
world,
yeah.
emotions, and so forth. As you were talking about how important it is to understand other people, I was thinking about it kind of from the perspective of the classroom, and how important it is for us to understand our students, or for the student to understand the teacher, and how that really facilitates communication and can facilitate learning in various ways as well. I was wondering if you could share how your interests in education began, and how you think we can use various aspects of social emotional processing uh, to improve education and exactly improve the things that we've been talking about: empathy, understanding others, and so forth.
I think I'll talk about why I chose education, because then we formed a organization called Quest, with which I worked for 14 years and just recently have retired from it. But why education? So I think that when a phase came in my life where I thought, and I think this comes in everyone's life, when you start looking around beyond your own wants and beyond your own personal life as to what is probably wrong, if there is anything wrong around us, and how you can change it, and what are the instruments to change it, and how you can probably contribute to change the things around which you think should be changed.
Yeah.
So that phase came, I started thinking about it, I started reading about it, and I thought that active politics is the best thing to change things. If you have political power and if you have positive political will, then you can really change the things the fastest, because that's a great power to have in a social structure that we have created now for the mankind. But that was not possible for me because of my profession, because that's a completely different profession, I believe, and it's a very I think about politics very positively, but somehow that was not possible for me because of my profession and because of the restrictions that I have, because of the demand that this profession has. So I thought that the second most important thing is education, because you may think about any problem in India, and if you start digging and if you start finding the root cause of it, according to me, it is in the education system. It is not in the curriculum. It is not. It's in the education system. And if we want to actually pinpoint it precisely, I think it is the problem lies with the purpose with which we educate our children. What is the purpose? And for generations together now, the purpose has been, when a parent educates its child, they're basically looking at happiness for the child. Then what is happiness? Then their definition of happiness is that child should have everything, quote unquote, is acceptable in the society, or is thought to be privileged in the society. And when we look at it, it necessarily is about the material things, because the parent thinks that my child should have, a good house, a good car, all those things. And when do you get it? If you have a good job. When do you get a good job? When you have a good degree.
Right.
When do you have a good degree? You have your good degree if you write the correct answer on that particular day. That's when you are going to have a good degree. And how do you achieve it? By hearting.
Yeah.
By hearting the things, or your 21 expected or 21 apexit and all that we have. So the entire purpose of education has been that you should be able to write good exam paper. That's why we educate, and so when a parent insists, go and study, what that parent basically means is that go and by heart. You should be able to know the answer on that particular day. Whatever happens before and after just doesn't matter. And because of generally in society, what we have been doing, how we have been calculating success, I think that also has an influence on this, because we call a person a successful person if that person is a successful professional. And when we say successful, it is about the monetary gain that his profession gives, has given that person. So when your definition is so set about success, about happiness, and when your instrument is so definite in your mind, then the very purpose of education, I think, changes. According to me, why education is that you study history, geography, maths, and everything so that you develop your own thinking. Every word is important. Your own thinking, so that you can take your own decisions. Those decisions, which of course would benefit you, but along with that, those decisions should benefit others as well. And even if they suppose don't benefit the other people, at least they should not harm the other people. That's why you need education.
Right.
but that we have lost that purpose, and as a result, what we are producing is that we are producing very selfish citizens. And we have, kind of glorified all the wrong words like competition, like workaholic, and all these words which are said very proudly today are actually bad words. They're bad things to teach children. So competition is not a good thing, according to me, to teach children that you have to be first. So our entire education system now is about finding the best student amongst all the students. However, the basic purpose of education should be what is best in each student. That is why that is what the purpose of education should be. So, in a nutshell, I thought that this is the root cause. The system is the root cause. The very purpose, uh, how the subjects are taught, is the root cause. And then, of course, I met a few friends, and then we started Quest.
Yeah, I think that's, I think your point is well taken. In the sense that, education and the purpose of it is beyond just numeric advancement. We really want to empower everyone, empower all learners, and education, according to me at least, is to make good citizens of this world, and make exemplary citizens out of every single person. There's actually a great book in Marathi about this called Shikshan Kashasati, which means why should we get educated, by Mrs. Kusum Kamath, that I've contributed to a little bit as well. But I think it's really important to keep this larger
For
goal
me, it is very
in mind.
simple that if human beings wouldn't have lived in a group, I don't think we would have needed education. The bigger the group, the bigger the requirement of good education.
Yeah, and also the requirement of understanding other
The other
people when
human beings.
you're living
Yeah.
in a group. The second part of my question then was, how do you think that we can start to cultivate a higher degree of social emotional processing across individuals, and how can we use these various things that we've discussed to improve education in various ways,
There is no one answer to this. Neither the answer is simple. I think the answer lies in the system in a country like India, where about still 70% students learn in the government system of education. So naturally, I mean, you cannot educate children in India privately. The system that we have, the government system, we need corrections there. We need corrections in pre-service training of teachers, in-service training of teachers, and everything else. And we need a great shift in the thinking of the parents, which means thinking of the citizens in general. So it's, I think, extremely simple in a way, but extremely complicated in another way, because we are talking about a complete shift in the thinking of the citizens. So I think it's not a question which can be answered simply.
Yeah, no, I agree. The question that I've always thought about in terms of all learners is thinking about individuals who may not have social skills to the degree that typically functioning individuals have. So there's a lot of people who have social anxiety or other disorders of social cognition. How do you think we can start to incorporate perhaps some of the acting exercises or methods that you may have learned or used to help those individuals out, say in a form of therapy?
Now, well, I'm absolutely not an expert on that, so it will be really wrong to elaborate on this. However, I'll tell you my feeling about it. I have a feeling that there are a lot of acting exercises which are about trusting the other person, which are about listening to the other person, which are about reacting to the other person and all that. So where the other person is involved, because acting, they say, is reacting. The other definition is that acting is actually reacting. to a person. That's another definition of acting. So, which basically means is that there is a constant presence of some other person or some other situation to which you are reacting. So there are many acting exercises around this, which I think should be not conducted by the acting teacher or acting expert, but by an expert from the field of psychology, so to say, who should learn these exercises and then implement them in the theory or whatever. As it is, picking up an exercise and just practicing it with a group that you are mentioning, I think that would be wrong. You have to have an expert who is expert in the subject matter of psychology, who has learned these games and has converted them as a therapy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to, adapt in kind of theme of our previous discussions as well. Take those differences into consideration and adapt the different skills. In kind of light of our discussion about, understanding other people, seeing things from their perspective, as an actor, I would love to get your take on this. For the common person, actors can be perceived to be in, an exclusive club of sorts, causing positive perceptions and negative perceptions. If we're really starting to think about empathizing with other people, how do you think we can start to humanize actors in various ways? Because at the end of the day, we
will stop earning money otherwise. You should start thinking us as, normal. We are an exclusive club. Unless and until you think like that about us, we'll cease to exist. No. No, on a serious note, I think this is not going to go away. There's this exclusivity because this skill is such, which the skill which makes you larger than life, the skill which makes you familiar with lakhs and lakhs of people at the same time. They recognize us. They feel that we are from, they know us. So I think it is going to be that way. You can't really deny the fact that no one can really think an actor to be just a common person because the profession that person is in, the very infrastructure that that person has through which it communicates, that person communicates, I think it is not possible. However, I think that as a common person, I need to think as to whether I am making a soft target, positively or negatively, of that person only because of the familiarity and only because of the accessibility and only because, I can do it because no one is going to question me because that's a public figure. So it more than us. I think it harms the other person, the person who is doing it, the person who is, kind of judging, or the person who is without thinking, blaming the other person or whatever, So I think that person is harming himself or herself more than the actor. So I think they need to be very careful when they blame things on actors. That I smoke because, some actor smokes. I behave in such a manner because some actor behaves in, such and such a manner. So if you are trying to find very soft excuses for your behavior or for your understanding or for your morals, then I think you are harming yourself more than the actor.
Right. Absolutely. And perhaps having this perspective and, really starting to understand that at the end of the day, we all put on our pants one leg at a time, so to speak, that we share a lot of commonalities will also facilitate meaningful interactions, collaborations across disciplines to make a positive difference in various ways. And so with this, I want to ask you one question that I've been asking, our guests consistently so far, and that is, what does success mean to you at this point in your life, and how was it different previously, perhaps?
There are different answers to it. Having time which the way you want to spend it is success, according to me. The way I want to spend my time, if I have that luxury, I think that is the ultimate success. I have always believed that my profession is not my life. It's a very important part of my life, but it is not my life. So there are so many other things in my life, and that's why I'm saying that if I can, spend the time that I have in my life, whatever is left, doing things that I really want to do, I think that's how I'll measure my success.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So with that, we'll go ahead and transition to audience questions. So we have our first question from Miss Amrita Basu, and she's asking, how can empaths or individuals who just empathize a lot with others prevent themselves from draining out or from over involvement, emotionally?
As I said, I think it is about the purpose. Why are you empathizing with that person? So, if you want to help, if you want to understand, what is the purpose of trying to empathize with that person? If that purpose is clear, I think then you might be able to channelize your energies well, because then you have a purpose that you want to achieve that, instead of just getting involved. In that case, I mean, if one is not able to control that, one must introspect if that empathizing is for that person or for me.
Yeah. So having that kind of purpose for empathizing, and
Yeah, I
that'll
think
help
that
draw
is important.
boundaries.
Yeah, there has
Yeah.
to be that direction, that goal as to why are you empathizing. So you can understand probably if you have achieved it, and if you have not, then what is the way. So there has to be a purpose for that empathizing, according to me.
Yeah, absolutely true. So our next question is from Mr. Sitanshu Mishra, and he's asking, based on your experiences with the performing arts, do you see some guidelines for teachers that you think we could use, or for a performer who is lecturing, or anything of that sort?
I think we teachers or actors, we are into business of communicating what we have. It may be either a written script for an actor, or a knowledge that a teacher has acquired. But it is about what I know, I tell the other people. So it is about communicating, and I don't think there is one way of communicating anything. I always say that if I am doing a play, then the middle seat of the first row should be reserved for me, the person who is performing, because I should be able to see sitting in the audience as to what I'm doing. They always say that an actor is a fiddle and a fiddler. So he's the instrument, and he is also the person who is playing the instrument. So I think that kind of distance has to be there to understand as to if I'm communicating well, can be understood only if I'm in that position of the listener. And if I think we develop that kind of ability in us, I think the communication would be successful.
Yes, absolutely. I think communication is key in various ways, and kind of goes back to your earlier point, when you said you have to convince the audience.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
that is the
similarly,
point.
the teacher has to get through to the students and communicate in a way that's really gets through.
There is also a flip side to it, of course. If you are good in convincing, and if you have a wrong point, you can still convince about that wrong point to the person, but then can't help it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have our next question from Spruha, and she's asking, we see movies in which teachers are influencing lives of young kids beyond academics in various ways. Can you share any experience of yours about the teachers that have influenced you, both in academia or academics, as well as in your acting career?
I immediately recall a comment by my teacher when I was in National School of Drama. She had seen my play not once, twice, but 7 shows she had seen back to back, all
Wow.
the shows. And then she had said that you are frighteningly precise. And I took that as a compliment that time. But later on in my life, I realized that it might not be really a compliment. She was saying that you are frighteningly precise. And as an actor, do I need to be that precise all the time? That I'm doing the same thing in every show? Is it a quality all the time? It is not. So the same sentence which I took with pride that time, and I think that holds good even in the normal things that I do in my life. That sentence has stuck in my head that you are frighteningly precise.
That's interesting, and that sentence is interesting to think about in terms of science and precision and all of that too. I'll have to
Yeah, yeah.
ponder ponder over
If it
that
is
one.
overrated, if precision is overrated, I don't know. I mean,
Well, yeah, in terms of at least my cognitive neuroscience and so forth, we function on the degree of milliseconds, and
uh,
so in term every millisecond counts. And so it's interesting how that can kind of change in various ways.
yeah.
Um, and so I'll go ahead and ask one more question. Mr. Sangit Das is asking, how can we change the perception of some other people towards us, including family members and friends, who think that expression through acting or theater is generally thought of as, kind of useless in various ways? How can we change people's perception about this?
No need to change it. It is useless. Yeah, I mean it. I mean, it all depends on from where are you measuring it. So just this example of lockdown and when everyone is merely trying to keep away from a disease, which is so viral and such a dangerous virus, what comes last? Acting. What are closed first? The theaters. What are opened the last? Theaters. Unfortunately, schools as well with theaters, but for some other purpose. But no, I think that if we are measuring it from the very basic essentials of life, and if we are talking about an entire cross section of a country like India, I think acting and this profession is a luxury. And again, I'm talking from this perspective, from a cross section of the entire country. And if one is really struggling for the very basic things, so I think who is asking it, what is the perspective of that person? I think that is very important. But if someone is saying that it is more important than your basic needs of life, I don't think that is wrong.
Yeah, it definitely can be thought of as a tiered approach in various ways. Now I'll take our very last question from Anveshna, and she's asking, competition has an interesting connection with internal motivation. Like when I score more, I'm more appreciated, and now I want to keep getting more scores. It may become negative when I have negative feelings for others and I don't want to be outscored, but it may be a positive to keep me motivated. Do you still think competition is a bad word with this in mind?
See, I just tweeted yesterday or day before yesterday that evolution is a trap. You can't go back. And what I mean by that is that all these things that, I had tweeted another thing that what would have happened if mankind wouldn't have gone to the moon? What would have happened to the humankind? And this question you can track back to even invention of wheel, for that example. What would have happened if the humankind wouldn't have invented wheel? So whatever we call motivation, whatever we call achievement, I have a very philosophical, counter question to that. That is this really is an achievement? Is that really what motivation is for? What is it for? Why do you have it? What are we going to achieve it? So if we wouldn't have gone to the moon, would we have lost anything? And what is that we would have lost? And if we wouldn't have invented wheel, what really? Because we were human beings before that, and anthropologists say that the happiest time for human beings was when they were nomads, when they had not settled down, when it was before the invention of farming. And I am a strong believer that the worst invention of humankind is farming. And all the problems are related to the invention of farming. Some other talk, maybe some other time for this to elaborate. But I think that we have to ask very basic questions when we utter these words, or when we think about these words, which are made so important. Like I said, competition. This is the motivation. Is it really that important a concept? I'm sorry about that, but that's the thing.
No. I think your opinion is certainly good to know, and certainly good for, I think, everyone to get a different perspective than the one that they may have. And I think that's important to keep in mind, that there can be different sides of each coin, and it's important to take those into consideration. So with that, I know you also have to run. So thank you for being a part of this and being here. And I'm sure people have gotten a lot of insight on various different topics today. So thanks again. And
thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks, Radhika. Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you.